I unfortunately didn't get a chance to do a full review of the David Nyeka versus Jay Opetaia fight yesterday. I have obviously seen it, and a variety of things. Yikes, that was some knockout. David Nyeka, I don't think he'll ever be the same after that knockout. And it's frustrating for me because I watched David Nyeka as an amateur, and I thought he'd do okay. I thought, in the Olympics, I thought he'd do better than bronze. I didn't think he'd get gold, but I thought at the very least he'd get maybe a silver. Or, he'd get somewhere, right? But when he turned over pro, he fought a couple of cream puffs. I seen him in a 5-rounder. I know in Australia and New Zealand they tend to do a few 5-rounders. I seen him in a 5-rounder against an undefeated guy a couple of years ago, and yeah, you could tell there was he needed a lot more work, but you could still see talent there. You could still see it. 3 weeks notice to take this fight. I just, no. As soon as I heard about it, I was like, he'll probably give a good account of himself, but he'll probably get taken out late. I thought it would end late. I didn't think it'd end this early. And he goes, he does buzz. He did buzz in the end of the second round, Jay Opetaia. He has a bit of power there in the AK, if nothing else. But to get knocked out like that, you're not going to come back from that. Or you can try and come back for it, but your punch resistance is going to be shot to bits after a knockout like that. You're going to need about a year to really recover, really seriously to recover from that. And what's that say about Jay Opetaia? Opetaia I seen at the face-off when they did the weigh-in, and the intensity on Opetaia's face is incredible. This is a guy you just don't want to mess with. Jay Opetaia is a tremendous talent. There's a lot of talk about him versus Zurdo. Zurdo is a very, very good fighter, but I wouldn't have him win in that fight. Although saying that, I don't think it'll be as one-sided as this one was. I think Zurdo, a lot more experienced than David Nyeka. Might not be, well, he's not as big, he's not as tall as Nyeka. And bear in mind, Nyeka is a natural cruiserweight. He's come up through the weights. He's come from super middleweight to light heavy to cruiser. Has a little bit of, I won't say timber, but he's not chiseled around the midriff, Zurdo Ramirez, so he is carrying a little bit. And very decent fighter, very good fighter is Zurdo, but I don't see him beating Jay Opetaia. I don't see any of the champions. If it's Badou Jack, the WBC champion, I don't see him winning. Badou Jack's in his 40s. That's just no. I don't see, who are the other champions actually? Who is the WBO? No, WBO is Zurdo and WBA. So yeah, WBC. Yeah, I don't see him winning against any of the other champions. Look at some of the contenders that are there. Again, I don't see any of them troubling Jay Opetaia. Having said that, when he goes to heavyweight, which he's talked about doing, that's going to be an altogether different task. But let's just talk about Jay Opetaia cruiserweight. This guy, as I said before, is absolutely lethal. This guy looks mean. He almost looks like someone when he's going into a fight that he's annoyed at you for even daring to fight him. He has that look in his eye of just like, how dare you want to actually box me? How dare you want to get in the ring with me? I'm going to absolutely F you up. And more often than not, that's what he's been doing. He's absolutely steamrolled some of the British level guys. He steamrolled Jordan Thompson, Elizara. I mean, I'm sure his head is still flying through the air now after that right hook. He beat up, what was the guy's name? He beat up, oh blimey, I can't remember, Jack Massey. And bear in mind, he went the distance with Joseph Parker. Never came close to being down. Never came close to getting hurt. Got an absolute shellacking against Jay Opetaia. The only guy we've seen be competitive with him and arguably beat him in the first fight was Myris Bradis. And even in his retirement fight, which is what that was at nearly 40 years old, Myris Bradis still gave a very good account of himself. A lot of people felt that he maybe even did nick the second fight. I wasn't one of them, but some people did feel that. One, it shows how good Myris Bradis is. And it also shows to me how strong the era that Alexander Usyk was in terms of the cruiserweight division. I mean, you got to bear in mind, right? And I don't mean no disrespect to the guys at cruiserweight, but Badou Jack, Chris Billum-Smith, Richard Riakporhe, Zurdo, who is a good fighter, these pale into insignificance in comparison to the guys Usyk was fighting. Hooks, Glowacki's, prime Glowacki. He fought a prime Myris Bradis. A lot of people feel that was a very close fight, but nevertheless, he still got the W. Murat Gassiev in his prime. Tony Bellew, who was a good fighter at cruiserweight, very good fighter at cruiserweight. These names, if you took Jay Opetaia out and put a prime Bradis in, and you put a prime Bellew in, You put a prime, say, Murat Gassiev, who had a lot more to him at cruiserweight. These guys would absolutely feast on the guys that are there today. That's not to knock them or knock what Jay Opetaia is doing, but those guys would feast upon them. And that's the era he's in at cruiserweight. As impressive as he is, and I think he's an absolute beast in the ring, he is a dangerous fighter. Oh boy. It's not the same as what Usyk did at cruiserweight and going into all their backyards as well. He's talking about heavyweight at some stage. Eddie Hearn has mentioned the likes of Alexander Usyk. I think one of the problems he'll have moving forward is that he's not as dynamic as Usyk. He's not as good as Usyk. He doesn't seem to have Usyk's speed or footwork. That's not to say his footwork or speed is bad. It's not on par with Usyk. He probably is a bigger, in fact, he's definitely a bigger puncher than Usyk. But defensively, he could be a bit reckless. He can get tagged up in there. I think that he lacks a bit of the physical strength to be able to really go in there and put it on some of these heavyweights. And I think, offensively, he's brilliant, but defensively, he can be a bit reckless. So moving up to heavyweight, if he goes in with that seek and destroy attitude, yikes. Although it could make for some really good fights, but yikes, that could backfire spectacularly. A fight I look at, and I think it would be brilliant on paper at heavyweight, it would guarantee us a knockout. I don't think anyone will be saying this wouldn't end in a knockout, but I could see it going very bad for Opetaia. It would be Opetaia versus Fabio Wadley. A much bigger, like the speed Wadley has, don't underestimate his speed. And he's a bit like, he's not as, how would I explain it? He's not as intense in terms of, he's not looking straight through you the way Opetaia is, with just that ferocity in his eyes. But when he turns it on, oh boy, Fabio Wadley is dangerous. And I could see him versus Opetaia being an absolute cracking fight. But I wouldn't be picking Opetaia to win that fight. I think that Jay Opetaia, lack of defense, I don't want to say he's chinny or anything like that. No, I think Nieka hit very hard and he did buzz him. But imagine that was a Fabio Wadley hitting you on the chin. I mean, this is the guy who made Fraser Clark look like he was having a stroke in there. So, moving up to heavyweight, oh boy. That could end maybe not the best for Jay Opetaia, but certainly a cruiserweight. I'd like to see him clean out. I'd like to see him become undisputed, which I think he will do. And then, as I said, he is going to want to, you can't just go to heavyweight from cruiserweight. Obviously, Alexander Usyk was probably one of the exceptions. He had 2 fights before going in for world titles. But you can't just go in as reckless as that at heavyweight, especially when you're a smaller guy. If you go in with if you want an example, right? A smaller heavyweight who he was with Top Rank for a while, who used to have a kind of reckless, come forward style, was George Arias. I think he was a Cuban. I think he was Cuban or from Panama, somewhere like that. He was quite reckless how he used to come in and used to throw a lot of shots. He'd no power. He'd absolutely no power at George Arias. I remember at the time Top Rank were promoting him. I think it was them anyway. And he kind of went under the radar for a couple of years. And then he re-emerged with a completely different safety first kind of style. And, make it out what you will, I suspect he was ironed out because of that. And then, you seen him when he fought Jared Anderson. You kind of seen like this guy, the lack of power, the lack of size, everything. You need to, if you're coming up to heavyweight from cruiserweight, speed, mobility, and defense. That's what you really need. He has speed, he's mobility, defense. If he goes in reckless, he is screwed. He's screwed. So Opetaia, I'd like to see him finish the cruiserweight division. It's not as strong as it was when Usyk was there. I'd like to see him finish it. But be very careful at heavyweight when you move up. That's what I will say. Be very flipping careful. Eddie Hearn has mentioned Alexander Usyk. Listen, Alexander Usyk is going to be gone soon. He ain't going to be sticking around. And even then, I'd still pick Alexander Usyk over Jay Opetaia. Listen, Eddie Hearn, if he starts going in saying, let's put Opetaia in with Wardley, with Dubois, etc., before he's ready, take your sweet time, Eddie. Take your sweet time. A lot of complaints about Eddie Hearn in Matchroom is the matchmaking. Case in point. Don't go there. I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts on Jay Opetaia. What did you think of the fight? Poor Nieka. I'd say, I don't want to say stick a fork in him, but a knockout like that's going to take some serious coming back from. Let me know your thoughts. Hope you enjoyed it. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, people. Peace.